It's odd how fickle the internet can be, isn't it? With Fall Guys thought to be running away with the summer, along comes a far less fancy game to snatch the crown at last minute and usurp the throne as the new It game for September, and possibly the foreseeable future. And would you believe this game actually came out in 2018? How odd does that have to be, huh? Releasing an indie game to no real fanfare and suddenly having it explode in popularity 2 years after the fact. On this Speedpass, is this sudden explosion of popularity of Among Us justified or just very sus? If this is the first you're hearing about this game, 1. It's cool that you're not as extremely online as I am, thank you for spending your limited online time on my stupid channel of all things. And 2, Among Us is the recent runaway success that combines elements of several multiplayer-focused games, where distrust in your fellow players is the norm. Games like Agro, Town of Salem, or the party game simply known as Werewolf and Mafia might come to mind, but those games will rely more on communication and deduction, while Among Us throws in some task and minigame-focused gameplay to add a straightforward layer to the genre. You play as one of several armless bean-shaped people in multicolored spacesuits, performing menial tasks of day-to-day life, while one or more of your crew is actually an imposter alien set out to kill you all. With no immediate means of identifying who the imposter is due to said spacesuit, you're tasked with either discussing the actions of your fellow crewmates and playing the blame game to either vote out this imposter, or complete your tasks so your mission can succeed before you all wind up dead. The game's graphics are as simple as it gets. All sprites and assets seem hand-drawn. Animations are simple and crude. Lots of jokey little bits and bobs are scattered about, with a very lighthearted tone despite the overall dark nature of the subject matter. And you know how people like to toss around, well, it looks like a Flash game, as some disparaging mark of a game's quality, even though many indie classics were created in Flash, and that doesn't make any one title inherently bad? Well, Among Us looks like a Flash game. I mean, this easily looks like something you could have seen in a browser window on Newgrounds, Armor Games, or Congregate. Not entirely surprising, since the dev team, Innersloth, created more than a few browser games for Newgrounds. Perhaps you've heard of or played the Henry Stickmin games? Yep, that's the same dev. Music isn't anything really of note here since it's almost never used. The game itself remains fairly silent, with a couple quick stings for certain moments and actions, and a proper spooky and atmospheric title theme. Sounds also go low-key mostly. Just a few beeps here and there for some minigames and subtle footstep noises. Doors open and close in that sci-fi airlock way, while harsher and louder sounds like alarms during emergencies, and of course the squishy crunch of a kill will grab a lot more attention. While the premise is simple enough, how to play gets a bit tricky, and vastly different depending on if you're assigned being a crewmate or an imposter for the match. Modifiers can be adjusted to increase or decrease certain conditions or parameters, like the number of tasks the crew has to complete before victory, or how long an imposter must wait before performing a kill. A total of 10 players can play in a match, but I guess I'll mention that there are plans to expand the game's features as a whole, so if that number increases, consider this fumbling explanation my attempt at future-proofing. Crewmates have the simplest goal, obviously. Complete your tasks, address any emergencies, and try to survive while keeping eyes out for any players being suspicious. Tasks are randomly assigned and take the form of various minigames with different amounts of commitment. It could be as simple as clicking a button and just waiting, or moving a lever, to more complex things like connecting up wires by their color or completing a maze. When a task is done, you move on to the next until all of your tasks are complete. If everyone completes their tasks, the victory goes to the crewmates. Imposters are the ones trying to win by ruining everyone's day. By default, there's only one in the match, but this can be increased to 2 or 3. Fuller rooms benefit from more imposters to keep things interesting, and having 2 in a 9 or 10 player match seems to be the comfortable norm. Unlike crewmates, imposters cannot perform tasks, as their only goal is kill everyone. There is a list of fake tasks that they can fake perform, pointing you to certain areas that would have these minigames so that you could better understand how to blend in, but you can't really do any real tasks beyond helping with emergencies that you caused. Imposters can kill after a countdown and within a certain range of the crew members. The kill is instant, leaving an immediate and unmovable corpse in its wake. Imposters can also lure away players by using those various sabotages to cause emergencies at any time remotely on the map, and potentially secure an easy victory if the crew fails to complete that emergency in time. Imposters are also the only players able to hide in and travel through the game's various vents. This makes imposters vulnerable to being suspicious, or as the community is tending to say lately, sus, and knowing how the maps work and player behaviors in general is key to outing the imposters successfully. If a crew member discovers a corpse, they can report the body, which ends the round and starts a discussion to try and expose the imposter. If they suspect or witness suspicious behavior, even without a kill, they can also hit the emergency meeting button located in a room to end the round. But these are limited to players and also on a cooldown. Once all cases have been made, either via text chat or voice chat, and the players vote on who they believe is an imposter, they can just vote to skip kicking anyone out. Whoever gets the most votes is ejected, unless skip voting wins or there's a tie between two players. Depending on the parameters set, the ejected player will be revealed as an imposter or not. If the number of imposters ties the number of remaining crew members, the imposters win. If all imposters are successfully ejected, the crewmates win, regardless of their task progress. There are clues, modifiable mind you, that can be used to recognize someone as a crew member. By default, certain tasks like the medbay scanner and the asteroid defense minigame will have visible effects on the map to anyone witnessing them, and not just the person performing the task. This can be turned off to make things trickier though. If you're following someone around the entire match and they haven't killed you, there's a decent chance they're also safe. If that imposter isn't just playing the absolute long game, of course, but it's not the wisest of moves if you want everyone dead before all tasks are completed. Any killed player returns as a ghost, visible only to themselves and other ghosts. Ghost crew members can still complete their tasks with the added advantage of being able to float through walls, so don't slacken your duties because you're dead. A harrowing thought really, but useful to the game. Ghost imposters can still remotely sabotage the crew. Ghosts can also get a special ghost chat, where I assume they all just talk shit about whoever killed them. Honestly, I don't know, since no one ever killed me in the entire 2-hour play session that we were playing, and the one time I was ejected, I was the final imposter. It doesn't always have to be blatantly obvious behavior to out an imposter. You don't have to witness them murder someone or see someone jump in and out of a vent. Suspicious behavior comes in many forms, and just understanding gameplay mechanics and imposter strategies can cause someone to be outed fairly easily. My best example of deduction came from this match. As a crewmate, I spent most of my time looking to stick around with one other person, so in the event the imposter came by, one of us would be a witness to a kill. After following Athos into the storage room, I watched Rotpar follow in after me a short bit later. Due to how lines of sight work in the game, I was visible to Rotpar, but Athos was not. However, due to the very direct manner Rotpar approached me, Athos entered his line of sight, and Rotpar immediately turned around, which set off alarm bells in me, as it meant he had no reason to enter that room other than an attempt to kill me while he thought I was alone. So Athos and I started wandering to other tasks, following Rotpar and keeping sight on each other. When one of us went out of sight, I would notice that Rotpar would start approaching me again, so I immediately would go find Athos. However, when I went into the greenhouse and performed the task, Athos ended up leaving that room, and when I was finished and left, I saw Athos's corpse in a room directly below where we all just were. I didn't physically see Rotpar kill him, but everything that had happened right before and up to that point had set my suspicions exactly, and that reasoning was enough to have him thrown out. This is the kind of multi-level thought process and deduction that makes this game so adored among the player base. You form stories while you're playing it. I'm honestly way more of a fan of playing as a crewmate than the imposter, since imposters require a lot more familiarity with the game, and I have more fun deducing things than deceiving people. I'd honestly suggest playing free play to familiarize yourself with the tasks in this game and their locations on every map. A lot of the reason I get called out as suspicious is because I honestly had no idea where I was going half the time. Tasks can also be tricky and a little unintuitive at times, so it's best to practice, since it's not like you can just ask for help while you're playing. Feel like I should have mentioned this earlier, but since voice chat is used a lot among the community, and the game doesn't have a built-in voice chat, it's basically the honor system in making sure no one talks during the gameplay sessions or after their own demise. It'd be a really short and boring game if players immediately just shouted who killed them upon their death. Lack of an in-game voice chat is sad, because it would be cool to have a system that would automatically drop your communications during rounds and deaths, so be mindful of that when you are using voice chat through some other means. Text, however, is working as intended and disabled during the rounds, as well as having that aforementioned ghost chat room thing. Not entirely contented by just the base idea, sometimes the community uses the game's various modifiers to come up with their own custom game modes within the game. A popular one involves a one imposter match with a low kill cooldown. The twist being the imposter announces who they are at the start of the match, has very low visibility, as one would when the lights go out, and a 15-second kill cooldown to spend their time hunting down every other player in the game while they still have to do their tasks. There's no voting, no emergency meetings, and just the imposter running amok like a serial killer. Things like this that I could see very easily being in the base game. I cannot imagine what it feels like for this indie dev. Imagine making a fun little project barely more complex than your standard flash fare that you always make, releasing it completely under the radar, and then finding out 2 years later that you're the #1 streamed game on Twitch. Suddenly you've got YouTubers making constant playthroughs with other big YouTubers. Twitter accounts and video channels dedicated to highlighting moments from the game. Now everyone's talking about playing and promoting your game, and your extremely modest servers are now under constant strain from the near 500,000 players trying to get rooms going at the same time. That's gotta mess with your head, right? This isn't the Fall Guys, we had some good promo and suddenly an audience that we didn't expect upon release. This is waking up one morning and finding several camera crews on your lawn. However, Innersloth has done some moves that I can only respect because they aren't taking the easy way out. Initially, figuring their game was a simple experiment at best, the core code was never meant to be expanded upon, so the devs announced a sequel. They're offering up new features, better stability, larger player capacity in the matches, balance tweaks, and the like. It was news that excited many people, since the game was 2 years old after all, and a sequel didn't seem like an unreasonable response to really bring in a player base. Then a month after that announcement, they cancelled that sequel. For good reason. And this is what I mean by a decision I respect, one that isn't easy. Instead of dedicating resources to this sequel, those features and improvements would be added to the original game. One that's already popular, that requires a massive core code rework. All too often I've seen multiplayer games, especially in MMOs, take their popularity and foolishly dump the resources into a sequel that no one wants. Ragnarok 2 and MapleStory 2 crashed and burned. Final Fantasy XIV, well, the 1.0 version, and EverQuest 2 had a much more lukewarm reception that did not get as much love as their original counterparts. Even the successful ones like Realm Reborn and Guild Wars 2 still split the initial player base with a game that played nothing like its first title. It's just such a weird move. So seeing a developer realize that's something to best be avoided is something that I have the utmost respect for, and I wish them all the best luck. And the hope that their game doesn't burn out nearly as fast as Fall Guys did. The price is also heavily influential over the game's success, ranging from $5 on Steam at its priciest, to completely free on mobile if you're willing to tolerate some ads. Or you can drop those ads for a simple $2. In-game purchases exist to make your Space Bean more unique, but there's plenty of cosmetic options available at the start, so the purchase options feel more like a means of developer support than any kind of status. With all this in tow, I can grant Among Us an easy go recommendation with a heavy stipulation. You will need a solid group of friends to play it. Without that, I'd have to knock that recommendation all the way down to a caution minus. The community is an outright requirement. And public matches aren't going to really help you form the stories and have heated but amusing arguments that you would have among your friends. You can generally just have a blast seeing how well the people you know can lie and deceive you. But with that recommendation of a community, keep the real tilted and salty people out of it. Getting so mad that you were lied to is getting mad at the game's very core purpose. And if you can't separate the way you're treated in Among Us from the way you're treated in real life, and start forming trust issues with these people, you need, again, to step the hell back. A shouting argument is only fun if it ends when the match does. That kind of behavior is the most sus.